Forget James Bond. The real Cold War wasn't run by suave spies with laser watches. It was run by paranoid engineers with unlimited cash who built some of the most idiotic, baffling, and downright stupid devices ever conceived. We're about to uncover 33 of their greatest failures, from weaponized animals to self-destructive firearms. This is a monument to government-funded insanity. 1. The Acoustic Kitty Project. Imagine the most paranoid room in the CIA in the 1960s. The coffee is stale, the cigarette smoke is thick, and someone has just had a terrible, brilliant idea. "Gentlemen," he probably said, "our enemies expect bugs in their walls, in their phones, even in their potted plants. But they'll never suspect the cat." This wasn't a metaphor. For a staggering $20 million, the agency launched a mission to surgically transform a living cat into a walking surveillance device. They implanted a microphone in its ear, a transmitter in its skull, and an antenna in its fur, creating a furry little cyborg of espionage. After what must have been the most frustrating training program in history, they finally unleashed their high-tech tabby for its first mission. It was promptly hit by a taxi, a $20 million surgically altered spy defeated by traffic. 2. The chicken-powered nuclear bomb. The British have always been known for a certain practical eccentricity. But with Project Blue Peacock, they achieved a level of absurdity that is truly world-class. The problem was simple. How do you keep a series of nuclear landmines, buried across the freezing German plains, warm enough to work during winter? The answer was not advanced batteries or geothermal tech. It was chickens. Actual, living chickens. The plan was to seal a few live birds inside the bomb's casing with food and water. Their collective body heat would, in theory, keep the delicate electronics from freezing over. This is a weapon of apocalyptic power being kept operational by barnyard animals. You have to admire the sheer audacity of a plan that hinges on the biological functions of a chicken to ensure nuclear annihilation goes off without a hitch. 3. The rectal escape kit. Every captured spy faces the same terrifying question. How do you hide your escape tools from a strip search? While most of us would just give up, the CIA's gadget department decided to explore the final frontier of personal storage. They engineered a small, bullet-shaped container filled with miniature saws, drills, and lockpicks. The intended hiding place? Exactly where you're thinking. This was not a theoretical device. It was a real piece of field equipment. The level of dedication required to carry this thing is mind-boggling. It takes a special kind of agent to look at a multi-tool capsule and think, yes, I am willing to make that personal sacrifice for my country. It gives a whole new, deeply uncomfortable meaning to the phrase, bringing your work home with you. 4. The gay bomb. There are moments in military history that make you question the sanity of everyone involved. In 1994, a U.S. Air Force lab proposed a chemical weapon so baffling it sounds like a prank. Their idea was to create a bomb that would disperse a powerful aphrodisiac over enemy troops, causing them to become, and this is a direct quote, irresistibly attracted to one another. The strategic thinking was that an entire platoon suddenly overcome with amorous feelings would cease to be an effective fighting force. This wasn't just a dumb idea. It was a profound misunderstanding of human psychology, sexuality, and the basic realities of a battlefield. It's the kind of plan that could only be concocted in a windowless room by people who had apparently never met another human being before. 5. The dog-do transmitter. In the high-stakes game of espionage, the best place to hide something is often in plain sight. But the CIA took this principle to its most disgusting and logical conclusion. They invented the ultimate camouflage, a fake piece of dog poop. This wasn't just a party store novelty. It was a hollow, masterfully crafted piece of artificial filth, designed to secretly house a homing beacon. An agent could just accidentally drop it near a target's location, and who on earth would ever stop to inspect it? It's a work of pure genius, born from the understanding that human revulsion is a more powerful deterrent than any lock or guard. While other spies got exploding pens, some poor CIA technician got the job of making fake dog droppings look convincingly real. 6. The Davy Crockett nuclear rifle. For a brief, terrifying period, The US Army decided that what the average soldier was missing was the personal ability to start World War III. Their solution was the Davy Crockett, a shoulder-fired recoilless rifle that launched a small nuclear warhead. This put the power of the atom in the hands of a single infantryman. But there was one tiny, insignificant design flaw. The weapon's maximum range was about 4 kilometers, while its lethal radiation blast radius could be significantly larger, especially with wind. This meant that if you weren't careful, you could fire this thing and end up irradiating yourself and your entire platoon. It was less of a tactical weapon and more of a last-ditch let's take everyone out including us button. 7. Bat bombs. This is an idea so unhinged, it could only have been dreamed up during wartime desperation. Conceived during World War II and revisited during the Cold War, the plan was as simple as it was diabolical. The military would capture thousands upon thousands of bats, attach tiny timed incendiary bombs to their bodies, and drop them over enemy cities. The bats, being bats, would fly off to find dark places to roost, like the attics and eaves of buildings. A short time later, the bombs would detonate, starting hundreds of uncontrollable fires simultaneously. The plan was actually tested, and it worked a little too well. During one trial, a batch of armed bats escaped and promptly burned down the American military base where they were being housed. It was a perfect, self-inflicted demonstration of why weaponizing chaos is a bad idea. 8. The scrotum concealment pouch. Just when you thought the rectal escape kit was the most personal a spy gadget could get, the CIA said, "Hold my beer." For situations where an agent needed to hide something larger than a few lockpicks, they developed a prosthetic scrotum. And they didn't half-ass it. Reports describe it as being disturbingly realistic. This wasn't just a bag. It was a work of art designed to fool even the most thorough of searches. The sheer mental fortitude required to wear this device as part of your everyday disguise is almost unbelievable. It's the kind of gadget that separates the casual spies from the true, deeply committed professionals who are willing to go to lengths that the rest of us can't even begin to imagine. James Bond had his martinis. Real agents had this. 9. Pigeon spy cameras. When you need reliable aerial reconnaissance, you think of spy planes or satellites. The CIA and others, however, sometimes thought, pigeons. Why not? They're cheap, they fly, and nobody suspects them of being on a payroll. So they developed tiny, lightweight cameras with automatic timers and strapped them to the chests of trained pigeons. The bird would be released, fly over a target like a sensitive military installation, and the camera would snap pictures. The pigeon would then, in theory, fly back home with the intel. But here's the thing about pigeons. Their mission priorities are notoriously flexible. What if your billion-dollar intelligence operation is derailed because the operative spotted an irresistible piece of discarded bread? It's a plan that puts the fate of national security in the hands of an animal that can be defeated by a sandwich crust. 10. The Soviet Emergency Evacuation Umbrella. Picture this. You're a KGB agent on the 5th floor of an embassy. The alarms are blaring, and your escape route is blocked. What do? The Soviet answer wasn't a hidden rope or a secret passage. It was a parachute, disguised as a giant, comically oversized umbrella. This wasn't a joke. It was a real prototype for emergency evacuations. An agent was expected to leap from a window, open their trusty umbrella, and float gently to safety like a heavily armed Mary Poppins. But have you ever tried to hold an umbrella in a strong wind? Now imagine that umbrella is the only thing stopping you from becoming a pavement pancake. What could possibly go wrong? It's a gadget that looks less like high-tech spy gear and more like a prop from a slapstick comedy. 11. The Goodyear Inflatoplane. From the company that brings you tires and blimps comes a creation that combines the stability of neither. Behold, the Inflatoplane, a fully inflatable airplane that you could pack into the trunk of a station wagon. Imagine a bouncy castle had a baby with a propeller. Made entirely of a special rubber composite, this thing looked less like a military aircraft and more like a pool toy that had gotten some seriously ambitious ideas. Getting it airborne took minutes, but the real question was its structural integrity in the face of, well, anything. Its main selling point wasn't its convenience. It was the chilling guarantee that any emergency landing over water would also serve as its own burial at sea. 12. The nausea-inducing sound cannon. In the shadowy world of non-lethal weapons, developers asked a profound question. Why injure your enemy when you can just make them profoundly sick? This led to the creation of sound cannons, devices designed to project low-frequency sound waves that resonate with human internal organs. The intended effect? Extreme discomfort, disorientation, and a powerful, undeniable urge to vomit. It's psychological warfare at its most visceral. Forget the bang of a grenade. Imagine facing a weapon whose only purpose is to make you feel like you've been on a tilt-a-whirl for 3 days straight. Could you imagine being the intern tasked with finding the exact acoustic frequency that maximizes nausea? That's a job you don't put on your resume. 13. The Antonov A-40 flying tank. The Soviets were never ones to shy away from bold, if completely unhinged, engineering. Someone in a design bureau looked at a T-60 light tank, then looked at a biplane, and had a moment of terrible inspiration. Why not both? The result was the Antonov A-40, a literal tank with a massive set of wooden biplane wings and a tail bolted onto it. The idea was to tow it into the air with a bomber and let it glide silently onto the battlefield, ready for immediate combat. It only flew once, and flew is a generous term. It was terrifying, unwieldy, and the pilot was also the tank driver. But hey, it solved the problem of getting a tank to the battlefield by air, right? Assuming your definition of solved includes a high probability of a fiery, tank-shaped crater. 14. The Soviet laser pistol. As the space race heated up, the Soviets developed a weapon straight out of a pulp sci-fi novel, a working laser pistol for their cosmonauts. Did they plan to have shootouts in zero gravity or fight off alien invaders? Of course not, that would be silly. Its real purpose was far more specific and uniquely cruel. The laser wasn't powerful enough to burn through a hull, but it was perfectly designed to disable the optical sensors on enemy satellites. Or, more chillingly, to be aimed at the helmet visor of an enemy astronaut during a spacewalk, permanently blinding them from hundreds of meters away. It was a weapon of incredible sophistication designed for one of the most vicious acts imaginable. Because what's a little space exploration without the potential for targeted war crimes? 15. The gyrojet rocket pistol. In the 1960s, the future of firearms was supposed to be silent, recoilless, and incredibly cool. The gyrojet pistol promised all of that. Instead of bullets, it fired tiny, self-propelled rockets. It looked like something a space hero would use, and it was even featured in a James Bond film. So, what was the catch? Well, almost everything. The rockets were slow to accelerate, making the gun practically useless at close range. They were also wildly inaccurate, and so pathetically underpowered they could reportedly be stopped by a thick jacket or a piece of plywood. Why bother creating a complex, expensive rocket-firing handgun when the end result is less effective than just throwing a rock really hard? It was the gun of the future, if the future was a massive disappointment. 16. The airdropped moose scream. Psychological warfare is all about getting inside the enemy's head. So, what sound would be most terrifying to a soldier hiding in a forest? The US military toyed with a few ideas before landing on one that is bafflingly specific: a moose. They developed a special airdropped mine that didn't explode on impact. Instead, as it fell, it emitted the blood-curdling guttural roar of an enraged bull moose. Imagine being deep in enemy territory, only to hear what sounds like a one-ton forest king being thrown out of a cargo plane. It wasn't designed to inspire fear of an attack, but to inspire a deep, profound, and paralyzing state of confusion. Your enemy isn't scared. They're just wondering if they're hallucinating a moose air raid. 17. Exploding rats. The British Special Operations Executive during World War II had a special talent for diabolical ingenuity. Their mission was to sabotage German factories, and they came up with a plan of truly grim absurdity. They procured hundreds of dead rats, hollowed them out, and stuffed them with plastic explosives. The plan was to sneak these rodent bombs into the coal piles used to fuel a factory's boilers. The unsuspecting German stoker shovels coal, throws in a rat for good measure, and boom, the entire boiler explodes. A brilliantly disgusting plan, right? The only problem was the Germans discovered the first shipment, but instead of causing panic, it backfired. They were so impressed by the sheer weirdness of the idea that they put the explosive rats on display at military academies, turning a top-secret weapon into a traveling exhibition of Allied insanity. 18. The Williams X-Jet. The Flying Pulpit. Somebody in the military decided that soldiers needed to ascend to the heavens, and they did so by creating what can only be described as a jet-powered church pulpit. The pilot stood, completely exposed, on a tiny platform powered by a roaring jet engine. To steer this screaming machine of questionable physics, you didn't use a joystick or pedals. You just leaned. Like a Segway from hell. It didn't just look ridiculous, it was a bellowing 360-degree invitation to every enemy combatant in the area. It effectively turned the pilot into the world's most conspicuous and easily targeted clay pigeon, proving that sometimes the future of warfare looks a lot like a very fast, very loud suicide mission. 19. The Who Me Stink Bomb. In a display of breathtaking maturity, the CIA dedicated its formidable resources to weaponizing a middle school prank. Codenamed Who Me, this was a pocket-sized atomizer that released a powerful, lingering stench scientifically engineered to smell like fecal matter. The mission wasn't to assassinate or capture. It was to covertly spray an enemy official and let them be consumed by a cloud of pure social death. Can you imagine the debriefing? Agent, your mission is to make the foreign minister smell so bad that nobody will stand next to him during the treaty signing. It was espionage regressing to its most childish form, a multi-million-dollar project to prove that humiliation is its own form of warfare. 20. The camera gun. Is it a firearm? Is it a camera? Yes. This was a pistol that had a full-blown identity crisis. Built directly into the frame was a miniature camera that automatically snapped a picture of its target at the precise moment the trigger was pulled. The purpose wasn't artistic photography. It was for the grimly bureaucratic task of kill confirmation. This is a weapon born directly from the mind of a paranoid middle manager who doesn't trust his employees. It is the ultimate tool for the assassin who, after a successful mission, has to go back to the office and file a very, very detailed expense report with photographic evidence. 21. The Propaganda Broadcasting Pig. If you thought pigeons with cameras were peak animal absurdity, you were wrong. U.S. intelligence operatives brainstormed a plan to use live pigs as mobile propaganda units. The idea was to strap a loudspeaker to a pig, set it loose in an enemy village, and have it broadcast pre-recorded messages like, "Surrender now." The planners seem to have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of pigs. You can't give a pig a mission objective. It won't strategically navigate a village. It will run straight for the nearest mud puddle or trough, turning your terrifying psychological broadcast into the muffled sounds of "give up your weapons," mixed with frantic oinks and slobbering noises. 22. The Pigeon-Guided Missile. Just when you think you've heard it all, history delivers this masterpiece. This is not a drill. The United States military tried to create a missile guided by a live pigeon. They placed the bird inside the missile's nose cone, where it faced a small screen showing the target. The pigeon was trained to peck at the target on the screen, and its pecks would physically adjust the missile's flight path. They were attempting to create the world's first organic, bird-brained guidance system. It was a plan so utterly bonkers, so fundamentally reliant on the whims of a feathered co-pilot of doom, that it remains the single greatest argument that sometimes a project's lead engineer just needs to be told to go home and take a nap. 23. The Bellybuster Grenade Launcher. With a name like the Bellybuster, you can be absolutely certain that user safety was not the primary design concern. This was an American prototype grenade launcher that you didn't hold. You strapped it directly to your abdomen. To fire it, the soldier had to lie on his back, aim with his entire body like some sort of human mortar, and then pray that the resulting recoil wouldn't shatter his ribcage. The designers hadn't just created a weapon, they had engineered a violent binding contract between the soldier and the launcher to both have a monumentally bad day. It was less a tool for fighting the enemy, and more a device for fighting your own skeleton. 24. The KGB shoe with a heel blade. The hidden blade in the shoe is a classic spy trope, but the KGB's execution was particularly treacherous for the user. It featured a spring-loaded blade concealed in the heel, but activating it wasn't as simple as clicking your heels together. It required a specific, complex twisting motion of the foot. A move designed to be subtle, but nearly impossible to pull off smoothly under pressure while trying to look nonchalant. The result? Countless agents likely ended up accidentally slicing their own ankles or Achilles tendons while simply trying to cross a street. It was less of a deadly weapon for your enemy and more of an incredibly complicated method of giving yourself a sudden, very suspicious limp. 25. The tree stump bug. Spies need to be masters of disguise, blending into their environment. The East German Stasi took this to a very literal and very conspicuous extreme. To eavesdrop on conversations in parks or forests, they deployed an artificial tree stump. This wasn't some small device hidden in the bark. It was often a large, hollowed-out stump, sometimes big enough to fit a person, or a smaller, solar-powered version packed with electronics. Now, how exactly do you discreetly place a brand new, slightly shiny tree stump in the middle of a forest where one didn't exist the day before? Who would possibly notice? It's the kind of espionage that relies on your target being completely oblivious to their surroundings, which, to be fair, was sometimes the case. 26. The gas mask for pigeons. The moment you decide your national security relies on spy pigeons, you inevitably face a series of increasingly ridiculous follow-up problems. For example, what happens if your feathered agent has to fly through a chemically contaminated zone? You can't just let your investment choke on nerve gas. The logical next step, obviously, is to design and produce miniature gas masks for pigeons. This is a real thing that happened. It's a solution so layered in absurdity it's almost poetic. The sheer futility of strapping a tiny, complicated breathing apparatus to a famously uncooperative bird is one thing. But the image of a pigeon, tumbling from the sky not from gas, but from the sheer weight and terror of its own safety equipment, is a perfect monument to overthinking a bad idea. 27. The suitcase scooter. A spy needs a quick getaway vehicle, but a car is too obvious, and a motorcycle is hard to conceal. The American solution was something straight out of a cartoon, a standard-issue briefcase that could be unfolded into a motorized scooter. The vision was a suave agent, snapping his fingers and transforming his luggage into a zippy escape machine. The reality was a grown man in a trench coat, trying to balance on a flimsy, wobbling contraption with tiny wheels and the engine power of a handheld blender. It was less of a getaway vehicle and more of a portable humiliation device, guaranteed to collapse at the first sign of an uneven sidewalk, leaving our hero stranded and looking like an absolute fool. 28. The Ushanka with a built-in flare. For the Soviet agent in deep trouble, a discreet way to signal for help was essential. And what's more discreet than the iconic fur Ushanka hat? So, some engineer decided to integrate a signal flare launcher directly into the headwear. The idea was simple. In a moment of crisis, the agent could activate the device and fire a life-saving flare into the sky. The glaring design flaw, of course, was placing a powerful pyrotechnic device inches from your own scalp. Activating it was a high-stakes gamble. Would you successfully signal your comrades for extraction, or would you just instantly set your own head on fire, providing the enemy with both a smoke signal and a source of evening entertainment? 29. The Stasi letter steaming machine. The East German secret police's obsession with reading other people's mail wasn't just a character flaw, it was an industrial enterprise. They built literal assembly lines of paranoia in post offices. These contraptions would automatically steam open thousands of letters a day, use a complex system of mirrors and cameras to photograph the contents, and then reseal them so perfectly no one would ever know. It wasn't just a few agents in a back room. It was a soul-crushing, meticulously engineered factory powered by pure, weaponized suspicion. The machine was the perfect metaphor for the entire regime: efficient, invasive, and utterly devoid of trust. 30. The Hiller VZ1 Pawnee, the flying manhole cover. If the flying pulpit seemed too safe and enclosed for you, the military had another option: the Hiller VZ1 Pawnee. It was, for all intents and purposes, a flying manhole cover. The pilot stood on a small circular platform directly over a massive, unprotected ducted fan. You controlled it by shifting your weight, essentially trying to surf on a contained hurricane. It looked less like an aircraft and more like a man desperately trying to escape a homicidal industrial blender by standing on its lid. It was the ultimate testament to the engineering belief that if you strap a big enough engine to absolutely anything, it will fly. Even if flying is, without question, the worst possible thing it could do. 31. The jump belt. Everyone dreams of a jetpack. The US military, however, delivered a bizarre and far less graceful alternative: the jump belt. This device didn't allow you to fly. It used a burst of rocket fuel to launch you into massive 30-foot jumps. Instead of soaring like a superhero, the soldier would bounce across the battlefield like a giant, clumsy grasshopper in full combat gear. This didn't make you a stealthy infiltrator. It made you the single most entertaining and easy-to-shoot target on the entire battlefield. You're not flanking the enemy. You're a human, skeet-shooting target, silhouetted against the sky, just begging for someone to take a shot. 32. The anti-turtle mine. To protect its harbors from enemy frogmen, the US Navy developed a hypersensitive underwater mine. They engineered it to be so advanced, so exquisitely sensitive, that it could detect even the slightest pressure change or movement in the water. The problem is, the ocean is in constant motion. The mine worked perfectly, but its primary victims weren't Soviet commandos. They were sea turtles, and large fish, and quite possibly a particularly aggressive school of squid. The US Navy had inadvertently declared a one-sided, high-explosive war on innocent marine life, resulting in a series of random, unexplained detonations that likely did more to terrify migrating whales than to ever stop a real threat. 33. The magnetic climbing spikes. Every great spy fantasy involves that iconic scene: the agent, silent as a shadow, scaling a sheer metal wall under the cloak of night. So naturally, the Cold War's finest minds set out to create a gadget for just that purpose. They invented boots with powerful electromagnets on the soles, designed to let an operative walk straight up the hull of a ship or a steel fortress. The problem? The laws of physics are famously stubborn. First, these magnets required an enormous battery pack, forcing the would-be cat burglar to lug around what was essentially a car battery on their back. But the real masterpiece of flawed design, the detail that elevates this into the Hall of Fame of bad ideas, was the sound. With every step, these boots didn't make a subtle click. They produced a deafening, bone-jarring K-chunk that announced the user's presence like a cannon shot. How can you be a secret agent when you sound like a one-man scrapyard falling down a flight of stairs? This wasn't a tool for stealth. It was a mobile alarm system that ensured the only surprise was how quickly you'd get caught. So there you have it. 33 gadgets that prove the line between top secret and profoundly dumb is dangerously thin. Now, for a question. Let's be honest, some of these ideas, like the Acoustic Kitty, failed because of one small, unforeseen detail. Looking back at this list, which one of these dumb gadgets do you believe had the most wasted potential and could have actually worked if they just made one or two small changes? I want to see your corrected, genius-level plans in the comments. If you enjoyed this deconstruction of historical madness, destroy the like button and subscribe for more.